We're at the 2024 Marrakech International Film Festival. This was a competition entry here. I saw it at Venice. I want to say it's one of my two favorites. I cannot help think about the monumental work that you did as a cinematographer with the Sundance entry, The Square. And now this week, Syria is sort of like had a very suppressed existence since the Arab Spring, but there's been some new developments, so I can't help but think about how in the filmosphere and the reality, this film posits itself on the same political scale. So I was thinking a lot about political will, collective political movements, the need for change, and on some level, I want to say Perfumed with Mint is a reflection of those undercurrents. How long has this film sprouted within you and sprouted outside of you? How long has this idea been permeating with you?
I think this idea I've been lingering with actually for about 7 years.
Okay.
7 years. It took 7 years for me to conceive the film somehow.
And when you say 7 years, are you doing a lot of inward introspection? Are you assessing the political climate of Egypt? From my perspective, I get a sense that there is a stagnation, perhaps, with the country, but that's very, I have no IQ as to what the political situation is. I get a sense that maybe there's some unrest, but it's more interiorized, perhaps. Would that be the case?
Yeah. Of course, the events of 2011, when they were first portrayed, they were portrayed as a source of hope, change. And then, like after 3-4 years, not just in Egypt, all over the region, you kind of have to face the reality of things, that these events turned out to be a crisis. And then somehow Egypt found stability after those events, but this type of stability does not necessarily mean that the country moved anywhere closer to a better situation. So you come to the point where you have to understand, or I had to understand, that now we're not in the crisis, but somehow we're locked or jailed in the shadow of the crisis, which is now things become more ambiguous, because during the uprising it was very easy because the country was polarized, things were clear, you can define what you're running against, that's what I'm running against. But after that it becomes very difficult because there is a lot of fear, there is a lot of doubt, there is a lot of shame also between people, and you really lose anchor somehow, like you really don't know what's the real idea of moving forward. And then you saw a type of, not just in Egypt, in the whole region, you see a type of that this event becomes only a dangerous memory, nothing more. It has no presence in reality, it doesn't have a material presence in reality, and it just becomes a dangerous memory. And then the whole concept of prosecution in these countries starts to turn around, that we have to punish this memory somehow, or punish the people carrying this memory somehow, because we don't want this memory to stay remembered somehow. So we're taking revenge on a memory, because there was nothing really tangible or real from these events anymore.
Of course, there's maybe some
it's just
the infrastructure, the collapse of some buildings or something. There's very little.
Absolutely. Not even on a political level, even on an organizational level, on a collective level, there is really nothing material there to actually grasp. So the idea was some kind of revenge over memory somehow. So, and they really wanted to take the idea that this is a kind of a dangerous nostalgia, authority decided, or like it's unpleasant nostalgia. We shouldn't be nostalgic about this. This shouldn't even be recorded in our history.
Yes, they're not going to erect some statue. They're not going to symbolize it. They're not going to put emphasis on it.
Exactly.
And that's why I think your text, what's so interesting is that there's subversion, refusing to let go, but also stagnating. There's subversion in holding on to something.
But that comes the interesting thing about memory, is that you don't actually get to choose what to keep as a memory and what to get rid of. You don't get to choose what to forget. Life would have been much easier if we can choose what to forget.
Yes, you're
I
right.
want to forget this.
Yes.
I should forget this, but I can't forget it. Or I should always remember this. It doesn't work like this. And that was the strange thing about memory, that I felt like, that was the really most interesting thing for me that drove me to the film, to create its world, or even to shelter in a ghost story somehow, because memory is actually a game with ghosts.
Yes. I love how you begin the film. I rewatched it a second time. The mother character says, my son refuses to die. And at that moment, at that crucial moment, we're allowed to think that there's going to be parallel people or parallel figures in the film, a cohabitation. And what I really, really appreciate is that there's a lot of abandoned buildings. It reminds of humanity's appetite for destruction, but it also it feels like a cemetery that's not being fully used. It feels like as if it's an open casket in a way. And then I started exploring this idea of the idea of mint in the film. I did some research and I found that it dates back to the pharaohs. They found it in the tombs of the pharaohs. Tell me about how that idea was propelled in your film. I don't think it's a national leaf, but there's a lot of historical. It's embedded into the historical fabric of the country, but also in this process of mourning or it's not an accident that you use the idea of mint.
No, it's I tell you the story of, I met the word perfumed with mint. The whole idea of the film started to click once I met this word. I met it, perfumed with mint. After the events, I got very bored from living in Cairo. It was very difficult. I live in a popular neighborhood in downtown Cairo. There was a lot of persecution. Police stop you, check your phone, check your social media. It wasn't a nice time. So I decided that I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go live. I had a friend of mine who used to be a painter.
Okay.
He works with like, I don't know, expeditions that come to tombs, like the French expedition, like, because one of the protocols is to send the painter inside the tomb, like this is the first person who has to get inside, so they can record how things look, not by a machine. How would a human see things?
Yes, fascinating.
Before they put a camera, before they put the infrared, before they put all this technology, the first person that gets inside the tomb has to be a painter that starts to sketch how the human eye saw.
Wow.
So they take a personal or a human perspective of how they saw things before the
different kind of X-ray altogether.
Before any type of technology goes. Anyway, so he took me there we stayed in Luxor, in a village very close to Luxor.
Yeah.
We had rented a house there, and then I was very interested in the village. I wanted to live in a village. I used to live in New York before the revolution, so it was very interesting for me to just take a completely different take on life in Egypt at that time. So there was a very respected man, a very old man, kind of a holy, blessed man in that village that died the first week we moved there. So out of respect and also to get along with the village, we went to his funeral to pay respect. And in the funeral, something very fascinating, that every time they would mention the man's name, they would add to his name, instead of his last name, perfumed with mint. So as if like thinking of him, remembering him, would bring a breeze of mint, or like somehow like his memory would instigate the smell of mint. So it's like, if out of respect, when you say you say the name of my father, instead of saying God bless his soul, they would say the name of the father or the person and perfumed with mint.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, this is very interesting, that how they tie memory to smell.
Yes.
And that's how, when I started to think, it clicked with me, like this political memory revenge, and the idea of that this man dying, they would add to his name perfumed with mint, and something here clicked with me, like about memory and smell. And that's when I got really excited about the film.
And what I appreciate about your film is this idea of the senses, because I remember when I started listening to the film, actively listening from the film, it's from the onset. You bring us in a very, it's a moving camera aesthetic, and we're allowed time to watch, but think, but also feel. And your film is so, the sound reminded me of a sleeping app I have on my phone that puts me in a different, like it's melatonin for my head. And sound is it's so expertly used here, and I just wanted to get a sense of, when you're thinking of creating this world, how did sound infuse itself? I want to say it was from perhaps even the onset, especially if you're gravitating to an experience like you said about the senses. How did sound enter into this film?
I know I was very interested in darkness, but I don't mean the absence of light here. I'm talking about the darkness and the shadows, because what I see from this, from my friends, they are a shadow of a human being, and that's the whole idea of darkness came in.
Yeah.
And then when we start to think of sound and darkness, and then you understand that when you live in darkness, you live by the ear. You don't live by because the eye is not that important anymore. Your ears becomes more important because it's your first system of defense somehow of understanding that. And that idea of living by the ear, not just by the ear regarding fear, but also that everything is like, is this person here? He's not there. I've been told he was seen there. Did he disappear? I've been told he appeared. Like, so you're living also life by the ear. Like, I don't know how to explain it to you, but the ear becomes like the central sense of understanding, even your reality, not just about danger or safety. And that was the idea of sound that came there, is that the ear is so important, and what is there for the ear to hear is very little. And that's the whole idea came from there. It's like this idea of paranoia is that it's the lack more than the abundance. So the sound has to be there, but it has to be also, you feel like it's deprived somehow. It's not.
I want to say it's a different register. Every sequence, the build-up, we're working on different registers. So what we're watching, or what we think we're watching, and how it is attached to memory. I loved how creative you were with the idea. We're talking about living in the dark. I was very much thinking of Pedro Costa's Vitalina Varela. Of course, there's going to be references to Uncle Boomni because of how people cohabit. The film is there's not a lot of moving camera aesthetic, and it feels like a series of tableaus. I was relating it back to a photo exhibition that I had seen where there was a narrative imprint and sort of build up, and so I was just refreshing my memory. I was looking back at your docu films that you worked on. It's night and day. It has nothing to do with your previous work. How were you thinking about dressing the sequences? Why did you feel the need to restrict, not flow within the frame, but restrict camera movement on this level?
As you said, because all my previous work got nothing to do with the work I'm doing right now. And for me, this was the part that was the desire, because I needed the film in my life. I wasn't happy with my life. I was almost depressed with my life. I didn't like the type of work I'm being offered. I didn't like because you work in a market, and then a certain type of film gets very big in the market, so you get a lot of the same type of film.
Of course.
And then life, you get carried away, and you feel like, why did I come to this part? I didn't want to go to this part, but then I found myself at this place, and I didn't want to do that. So that also, to be honest, I needed the film somehow to get me out, to look up, to wake up in the morning, to get out of bed, because otherwise I'm not happy to live the life I was living at that time. So that's where the film becomes very important for me. The idea is that I always approach cinematography, even before working all this film, as a very political work. I don't believe there is something called aesthetic that in the abstract. I think even color, like maybe, I don't study color like painters, but I know if people live in this neighborhood, probably their houses would be colored this way, they would probably be dressed with these colors, and so on and so forth. So for me, everything is super political. Even the idea of the frame and aesthetic, it's super political, because I believe an image is sincerely independent from the medium. It's film done. Like I didn't like these discussions about cinematography that much, and I wanted to make an experiment with myself, because the idea, if you don't have rules for this experiment, it won't be an experiment. It would be a practical thing that you can go and fool the world like about how you found these things, but it's not true because you know it was coincidental. I didn't want to do something coincidental again. I wanted everything to be done with total precision because I want to test things, to prove things to myself, not to somebody else. I want to surprise my own self before I surprise anybody else.
Yes.
That was very important for me. So that's why I took a lot of time in this cinematography of this, even though there isn't much. And I also like put a rule like I'm going to try to shoot this film with the minimum amount of images possible. I don't want a single shot there that is coverage, or a shot there that is trying to show the beauty of the face of someone. I'm not going to think like this anymore. I want this to be as precise as possible, as political as possible.
Yes, you really feel that. You really feel that. Yeah. And I feel it's the type of film, like there's some filmmakers in the film ecosystem that I'll have seen their first film. Like I'll take a bad example, but like a Lisandro Alonso. It's with the fourth film that I then revisit the first, second, third films. I'm saying, oh, okay, now I understand the weight. Now I understand the artistic intent, and I almost feel like this will be that film for me. Like in your third film, I'll then revisit this film. I'm like, oh my God, now I see the mastery. Then I see the intent, and I see the artistic voice. I get a sense that that's going to happen for me with this film. Anywho.
No, but it's a very interesting idea what you're saying, because also when you make a film you have to respect this, actually, not because it's very easy to get angry at people saying this or it's very easy and it's stupid also to get angry, because you have to accept the fact that people see through what they know. Even you, even me. I only see through what I know.
Of course.
So you can't argue about how people see work and can't argue about how people see images, because that's how they know. Maybe if they have time with it, they would think differently.
Yes.
So I understand what you're talking about.
There's a lot of I want to say weight and gravitas to every single sequence. It's not just a collection of images; it's a collection of ideas and thoughts. So I was reading that much more on the second viewing than the first. Thought the first time it's very, oh my God, it's a very dense world. Like there's a lot of there could be a lot of allegorical ideas. There could be a lot of political text. So on a second viewing, it allowed me to get more into the mechanisms. I'll end with this. Is I don't necessarily want to know what your next feature is going to be like, or what your next feature is, but I'm very, very curious about potential themes or ideas that you as a human being or you as an artist are considering and thinking about. Again, your country is going through not radical change, but there's a lot. There needs to be a lot of manifestations that come out from the artists, and I imagine that for you there's a need to want to contribute to that. So I just wanted to get a sense of.
I think it's more of a law, because I think of a law.
Okay.
Because I think as a filmmaker, my relationship to my country is like the relationship of seriously like a relationship of a sculpture in the mountain of marble. You have to go to the mountain, cut from the mountain, and then you have to sit down and think, and then you work with it. At the end you have a piece in front of you, but you know the piece is from the mountain, and the mountain now is inside the piece somehow. You know that at the end of the day. So I don't try to concern myself exactly about what I want to say with Egypt, because I know I live in Egypt. I live the reality of Egypt. I live what people live in Egypt, and that makes me feel good not to think about Egypt, because it's really in my everyday life. All those challenges the country is going through is really in my daily life every day. So that's why I don't feel I need to think of Egypt realistically that much. That's why I also need to think of Egypt mythologically somehow.
Yes.
Because I believe, at least that's how I see myself now. I come from a very defeated generation and a defeated time. And I also know that mythology is the art of the defeated. They need the defeated, because the idea of justice is impossible in reality. So maybe we find it in imagination somehow. That we have to imagine it. Have to imagine everything. Even sometimes we have to imagine who we are, because there isn't much space to be who we are in reality. So it's better to imagine. So sometimes I feel, okay, that's nice. It gives me peace in my life. Somehow gives me something to work with, just to sit down and imagine who I am, or imagine what I want to get to or what I want to do, because in reality it's not that important anymore.
I love the fact that we're ending on what you're saying right now. It speaks to me. So
Thank you.
Congratulations with Perfume with Mint. I
Thank you.
hope people get to sit with the film, get to live with the film, and get to experience the film. It demands a rested mind and also an openness to go and traverse into this world, because it could be many things for many different people. So I think you're off to a great start as a director. So I'm going to say shukran because we're in Morocco. So shukran, and thank you for your cinema.
Thank you.
IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.